Okay, get this. What if I told you that you, a giant redwood tree, and the tiniest little actinium are all built from the same exact Lego block? It sounds wild, right? Well, today, we're going to dive into that fundamental piece of life.
I mean, really think about it for a second. Every single living thing on this planet, from a massive blue whale all the way down to the mold growing on that bread you forgot about, it's all made of the same basic stuff. So the big question is, what are those fundamental pieces?
The answer, of course, is the cell. Now, this is the textbook definition, but pay close attention to two words here, structural and functional. Honestly, if you get these two ideas, you've unlocked the key to understanding, well, pretty much all of life. So let's break that down.
All right, so the structural part, that's the easy one. You build a house by laying down bricks, one after another, right? Well, a living thing is built the exact same way, just with cells. Cell after cell after cell, they are quite literally our biological bricks.
But here's where things get really, really cool, that functional part. See, a brick isn't just a block taking up space, is it? Its job, its function, is to create shelter. And it's the same for cells. Every single cell in your body has a job to do. When you take a breath, that's millions of cells in your lungs doing their job. When you grow, that's your cells dividing and multiplying. Everything we do is just the grand total of what all our tiny cells are doing.
Okay, so if these things are our building blocks, how did we ever find them in the first place? I mean, they're microscopic. Well, it all started with a game-changing invention, the microscope, and it took a few centuries of some seriously brilliant people to put all the pieces together.
So, our story kicks off way back in 1665. A guy named Robert Hooke is looking at a super thin slice of cork with his, pretty basic microscope, and he sees all these tiny, empty boxes that look like a honeycomb. He calls them cells. The only catch? The cells he was looking at were actually dead. It wasn't until about a decade later that another scientist, Antony van Leeuwenhoek, decided to look at a drop of pond water, and what he saw blew his mind, tiny living things swimming around. He called them animalcules, which is just an amazing name. Then fast forward to 1831, and Robert Brown makes a huge discovery. He spots the dark spot in the middle of the cell, which we now know as the nucleus. All of this incredible work was building up to something huge around 1838.
And that's when two scientists, Schleiden and Schwann, put it all together into what we call the cell theory. And it's so beautifully simple. Point 1, all plants are made of cells. Point 2, all animals are made of cells. And then, a little later, a third absolutely crucial rule was added. All new cells have to come from cells that already exist. They don't just pop out of nowhere. This wasn't just a neat idea, it was revolutionary. It became the absolute foundation of all modern biology.
Okay, so we know they exist. Now let's zoom way in and take a little tour. Because a single cell isn't just some simple blob of jelly. No way. It's more like a crazy, bustling, microscopic city with its own city limits, its own environment, and even its own city hall, calling all the shots.
And the first thing you'll notice is that not all cities are built the same. A really big difference is between plant cells and animal cells. If you look at a plant cell, it has this super rigid outer layer called a cell wall. That's what gives plants their structure, why a tree stands tall. It gives the cell a fixed, boxy shape. But animal cells, they don't have that wall. They just have a flexible outer layer, the plasma membrane, which means they can be all sorts of different, squishier shapes.
But even with those differences, most of these cellular cities have the same three main districts. Let's stick with our city analogy. First, you've got the plasma membrane. That's the city border, controlling everything that comes in and out. Inside that border is the cytoplasm. Think of it as the general environment of the city, this jelly-like stuff where all the work gets done. And then you have the nucleus. That's City Hall, the command center holding all the important blueprints for the whole operation, the DNA.
So let's start at the border, right? At the plasma membrane. Because this isn't just some boring wall. It's an incredibly smart, incredibly active gatekeeper. And what it does is absolutely essential for keeping the cell alive. This membrane has this superpower, and it's called being selectively permeable. It's a fancy term, but the idea is simple. It means the membrane is picky. It doesn't just let anything wander in or out. It's like the bouncer at the coolest club in town. It checks the list, letting in the good stuff like nutrients and oxygen, and kicking out the trash like waste products. It's the ultimate gatekeeper. So how does the bouncer decide who gets in? Well, there are basically two ways materials can cross this border. The first is called passive transport. This is the easy way. It requires zero energy.
Things just naturally flow from where there's a lot of them to where there's not so much. Think of it like rolling downhill. But then you have active transport. This is the hard way. It's when the cell needs to move something from a low concentration to a high concentration, basically pushing it uphill against the flow. And just like pushing a real boulder uphill, that takes energy. The cell has to pay for it, and it uses a special energy molecule called ATP. That's like the cell's cash.
A perfect everyday example of that easy, downhill passive transport is something called diffusion. Let's say your cell needs oxygen. If there's more oxygen outside the cell than inside, the oxygen just drifts right in, crosses the membrane, no problem. The cell doesn't have to spend a single drop of energy. It's a beautifully simple and efficient system. All right, we've been looking at life through a microscope, focused on just one tiny cell. But now let's zoom back out. Let's see how these little living bricks actually build the incredible, complex world of life all around us.
Because when you zoom out, you see that life comes in two main flavors. On one hand, you have unicellular organisms. Think bacteria or amoeba. These guys are the ultimate minimalists. They're just one single cell doing the whole shebang. But then you've got multicellular organisms. That's us. That's plants. That's animals. We're not just one cell. We're made of trillions of cells, all cooperating in this massive organized society.
And that society has a very clear structure, a hierarchy. It starts with the individual cells. When a bunch of similar cells get together to do the same job, they form tissues, like your muscle tissue or nerve tissue. Then, different tissues team up to build organs, like your heart or your brain. Those organs don't work alone. They form organ systems, like your circulatory system or your nervous system. And finally, when you put all those systems together, boom, you get a complete living organism. You get you. And this brings us right back to where we started, to that big idea. It doesn't matter if you're looking at a single bacterium or a massive whale. The rules of the game are the same. By understanding how one single brick works, how that one tiny, elegant cell functions, we get the key to understanding the entire house. We unlock the secrets to the incredible complexity of all life.
And the crazy part is, we are still discovering its secrets. Every single one of the trillions of cells inside you right now is its own tiny living world, running on a set of instructions perfected over billions of years of evolution. It really makes you stop and think, doesn't it? What other incredible secrets are they still hiding inside of us, just waiting to be discovered?